Today's message is entitled Painful Providence. Painful Providence. One of my favorite stories in Scripture is the story of Joseph. Not just because I bear my middle name, his first name, and that ain't it. But it has something to do with, anybody just have a hard life through your eyes? When you look at your life, you see it as being difficult and challenging, and you kind of had a hard life. Anybody had a hard life? You had a hard life? Pretty rough life. And so often when you have a hard life, sometimes you don't know, you feel like you're the only one that's had a life as hard as you have. But as we look around and we talk to people, we find out everybody's had their problems. Well, in looking at painful providence, one of the things we need to be mindful of is what happened with this fellow named Joseph. Called by God, special boy. Just like some of you and I, special boys, special girls. And how many of you, the enemy tried to get you while you were young? These babies' ages. You know, when you were young, you tried to get inside your life, and through your family's generational curses, you found yourself being vexed and troubled by all kinds of things, even as a small child. And that's how the enemy tries to get you and I. Don't forget, any time a king ever tried to conquer, didn't matter if it was Israel, it didn't matter if it was the Germans with the Jews, they went after the young. Matter of fact, Nebuchadnezzar said, I want the best looking, the most talented, the smartest, I want the best pick of the litter. He always goes after young people. He tries to catch you early. And this is kind of what happened with Joseph. Except God had a plan for Joseph's life, just like he has a plan for your life. And it doesn't always go the way you want, but there's this thing called providence. And what providence is, it means looking to, or preparation for the future. Provision. So when you hear the word providence, you got to think it is someone looking ahead of you, making preparations for you, and providing provisions for you. That is the word providence. And you sit here today and you wonder, what does the word providence have to do with me? Because, Pastor Ricky, I just struggled through life. I had a hard time. I had it difficult growing up. Mama wasn't there. Daddy wasn't there. I had it hard coming up. But yet, I'm reminded of Psalms 27, verse 10. It says, when your mother and your father forsake you, even then the Lord shall take you up. So what's the big deal? I want you to think about this for a minute. He was a dreamer. How many of you were dreamers when you were small? Huh? You were a dreamer. You had dreams. You had hopes. There's things I remember saying when I grow up. Well, see, somewhere along the line I decided I wasn't going to grow up. Know what I'm saying? But that's me. I have a t-shirt that says, you know, getting old is mandatory, but growing up is optional. So I just refused to grow up. Ask my wife. So I don't just rush into these adult situations. I tell my children, stay young and childish while you can, because once you get to that age and you hit this adulthood, things kind of take off. So he was a dreamer. And don't you know there are some dream killers out there? There are some people that want to crush what you have faith in, things that you wanted to be a doctor, you wanted to be a lawyer, you wanted to be a fireman, you wanted to have something. None of us really turned out and said, well, I just want to grow up to be this terrible thing, a person that we ended up being, some of us. But God, even in that, had a plan for your life. What happened? His brothers, being as jealous as they were, decided to throw him in a pit. Why? Because Daddy liked him more than the way it looked the other ones. How many of you know you have favor with God? And how many of you know that favor is not fair? I don't like fair. I'll I'll take my favor. I don't want fair. Just because you get blessed with something, I ain't jealous, because when I need mine, I expect God to come through for me. I'm not worried about fair. I don't want fair. I just want God's favor. So even when this young man was taken and thrown into this pit by his own siblings, what you and I need to recognize is God had provision there. What are you talking about, Pastor Ricky? If you look at the story, and I'm going to go through this as quickly as I can. If you go to Genesis chapter 37, Genesis 37, I want you to see verse 26 at God's provision. We understand he was thrown into the pit, but you need to look at God's provision for Joseph in this situation. Verse 26 says, Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain by killing our brother? We'd have to cover up the crime. Instead of hurting him, let an officer of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, Potiphar, you gotta understand, he said, don't kill him. Let's do something else with him. That was God's hand upon one person. The rest of them wanted to kill him, but God moved on one person's heart on Joseph's behalf and said, don't kill him. Don't kill him. Let's protect him. Why does that matter? Listen, don't sell him to those Ishmael. Listen, you got to understand, they could have killed him. Instead of hurting him, let's sell him to those Ishmaelite traders. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. And his brothers agreed. They're going to kill him. But God's provision.
Touch one heart.
All he needed to do was touch one heart. Spare the rest of them. Why does that matter? Because the next step, you got to understand, he went from that pit into Potiphar's house. And how many of you know, when he had no fault of his own, he ended up with this woman. I mean, can you imagine how good looking that boy was? And here's this woman looking at him going, I'm going to get me a piece of that right there. One way or another, I'm going to get me a piece of that right there. Don't you understand? The world is able to identify the beauty in you. The world understands the gifts and talents in you. The world always goes after the best that God has. Always has. And some of you that are in this room right now, I don't care where you've been, what you've been through, you are God's best. And that's why the world came after you as hard as they did, because the world wanted to steal. He wanted to take away what God had ordained for your life. And some of you, it worked. Some of you, it worked. But somebody say it's not too late. It's not too late. God is still working in this situation. God still has a plan for your life. So he finds himself being tempted and going after by Miss Potiphar. And what happens? She sits up and lies on that boy. Lies on him. Anybody ever been lied on? Now look, let's get it straight.
Most on women.
Whatever, Eddie. I know for a fact a lot of stuff I was guilty of. A lot of stuff I was guilty of. But there's some things that the enemy put on me I was not guilty of. But let me tell you something. It did not stop the plan or the provisions of God. Why? Because even though Miss Potiphar had her plans, chapter 39 verses 1 through 5, let's find that real quick. Make a right. Genesis 39. It says, when Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelites traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was the captain of the guard of Pharaoh and the king of Egypt. The Lord was with Joseph. That's all you need to know right there. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served the home of his Egyptian master. Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. So this man had favor. So you got to keep that thought in mind, that when Miss Potiphar decided to go after Joseph and tell that lie, can you imagine the heartbreak that Potiphar himself went through, realizing that even though, I mean, you look at it, can you really think that man who said the Lord is with this guy, everything this man does is like gold. He touches it, it turns to gold. He's awesome. And now all of a sudden, I got to put him in jail.
You know what, Pastor Ricky? He might have realized that.
I believe he did.
Knew his wife did that.
That's right.
He could have killed him.
He could have.
But he put him in prison.
There you go. He had favor. Y'all see the favor of God? Instead of killing him, he says, I'm just going to put you in jail. But somebody said that was a setup. That was God's provision. God had to take him out of Potiphar's house and put him in prison. Some of y'all said that would make no sense. Absolutely. Anybody up in here? Listen, I'm going to say it, but you're going to correct me later. Found the Lord in jail. I'll get beat up for that later on. Why? Because my wife said the Lord ain't lost.
Who lost?
Y'all were lost. But yet God met you on your road, whether it was in jail, if it was on the corner, if it was sitting in the house, wherever it was, God met you right where you were.
Amen. Amen.
So if there's a prison cell, you need to tell the Lord, thank you for sending me down long enough to hear you.
Amen.
So what happened? He goes into the prison, and then let's look at verse number 21 of 39. Again, God ain't done with this joker yet. Verse 21. But the Lord was with Joseph where? In the prison. And showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. Before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and over everything that happened in the prison. The warden had no more worries because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. So he went from the pit, where he didn't get killed, to Potiphar's house, where he didn't get killed. He was then put into prison and still got favor with God and man. That goes to tell you the story when Jesus said he was about 12 years old. He was with his parents and they went to the synagogue and they ran off and left him. Went 3 days journey and they had to come back. And they said to him, why have you done this to us? He says, didn't you know I'm going to be right here? This is where I belong, in the house of God. I'm about my Father's business here. But this is what the text said. The text said, but he submitted himself to them. And listen, he increased. He already had favor, but he increased in favor with God and with man. When you submit to your authority, when you do what God tells you to do, when you listen to those people that God has placed over your life, you gain additional favor.
That's right. Amen.
That's right.
Otherwise, you will find yourself being cursed again and again. Anybody sick and tired of being cursed?
Yeah.
Anybody tired of going through it? Then listen to somebody.
Amen.
Listen. We don't know it all. I have elders. I have an assistant pastor that I talk to. I have deacons that I go, tell me, give me your input. Come on now. You got to listen to those that are God placed over you. Romans 13. There is no authority given to men except that which is by God.
That's right.
Provision. God is taking care of you by putting these people in your life, and even there, he finds himself in this jail. What's going on in the jail? It just so happened that somebody had a problem. Chapter 40, verse number 12. This is how it's going to read. It says that, I'm going to back up a little bit. It says that these cupbearer and this other cat had some dreams, had some problems. But verse 12 says, this is what the dream means, Joseph said. The 3 branches represent 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up and restore you to your position as a chief cupbearer. And please remember me and do me a favor when things go well for you. Mention me to Pharaoh so he might let me out of this place. For I was kidnapped from my homeland and the land of the Hebrews, and now I am here in prison, but I did nothing to deserve it. Here he is. God just so happened to put him in a situation where he can use his gift to bless somebody else. I need to speak to somebody right there. You need to understand there is a gift in you that is not for you, it's for somebody else. And when you use your gift to bless somebody else, somewhere down the road, that's going to return unto you.
That's right.
Amen.
Don't be selfish in it. Don't be selfish in it. You never know what God wants to do. You just do what God tells you to do. Let the hand of God be upon you. And in due season, somebody say due season. In due season, God's going to bring it to pass. And it's going to work out for your good.
That's right.
So here he is in jail, and all of a sudden we know the story that the cupbearer gets out. And now all of a sudden Pharaoh has this dream. He is troubled. He's in his palace, chapter 41. And look at verse number 1. It says, 2 full years later. That's all I need right there. 2 full years. Somebody said, God, when is my turn coming?
God, my turn.
You're wondering, when is the change going to happen for me? When am I going to get released? Don't you understand that some things take time?
That's right.
Some things take time. God got to move on, not only on you, but he got to position other folk. He got to get them ready and hungry to receive the blessing. It just don't happen like that. God got to shake some things up and get folk uncomfortable so that when you walk in, they'll be ready to hear what you got to say.
Yes, amen.
Let's look at verse number 8. The next morning, Pharaoh was very disturbed by the dream, so he called for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. When Pharaoh told them his dream, none of them could tell what they meant. Finally, King's chief cupbearer spoke up. Today I've been reminded of my failure. Some time ago, you were angry with the chief baker, and then you imprisoned us in the palace of the captain of the guard. One night, the chief baker and I had a dream, and each dream had its own meaning. There was a young Hebrew man with us in prison who was a slave of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he told us what each of our dreams meant. And everything happened just as he had predicted. And I was restored to my position as cupbearer, and the chief baker was executed and impaled on a pole. Oh, here it is. 2 years later, can you imagine Joseph sitting in prison saying, I know you went up there and forgot about me. That selfish so-and-so, I help him, I bless him, and here he lets me sit. He ain't told Pharaoh nothing. It wasn't time. Remember the word providence. It says it's looking forward. It is preparation for a future. It is provision. It wasn't for then, it just might be for now. Some of you are going, I'm not sure when my change is going to come. It seems like I've been waiting a long time for all this to shake off of me. It's coming. Let's look at verse number 33. Therefore Pharaoh should find an intelligent and wise man and put him in charge of it. This is after Joseph had interpreted the dream and says, you're going to have so many years of good years and so many years of lean years. And what you need to do is, you need to take during those good times. Listen, this is a lesson for you and I. Take some money while you got it good and store it away for when it's bad. Oh, y'all don't want to hear that. Y'all like me. I get it. I spend it.
Amen.
I live by the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. Well, actually, the Lord giveth, the Ricky giveth away. But this is a principle that we need to understand. When you get a little bit, we really should live by 10, 10, 80. 10, 10, 80. Write it down. 10, 10, 80. 10% to God, 10% to self, 80% to the world. Good principle. Not only will you fulfill the requirement of your tithe, you will be putting back a little bit for future events. Just chew on that.
At the same time, helping somebody else.
Doing what you're responsible for, paying our bills. So what's the big deal here? Why is this even important, Pastor Ricky? Because we know that what happened is Pharaoh places Joseph over everything. He's second in command. You'll find that in verse number 50 through 52. But why did all this happen? What is the provision here? What is the providence that is so important? In closing, Genesis chapter 45. You will find why this happened. And some of you don't realize sometimes that things happen and you're going, I don't understand it. It wasn't meant for you right then. It's meant for later. And some of us are coming into our later. We're getting it. Y'all know the songs. It says your later will be better than your former and all that good stuff. Listen, I'm just trusting God for my daily bread. I'm getting what I need right now. And whatever He has for the future, I'm good with it. Why? Providence. You got to understand this. Verse 1 of Genesis 45. Joseph could stand it no longer. There were many people in the room, and he said to his attendants, "Out, all of you." So he was alone with his brothers, and when he told them who he was, then he broke down and wept. And he wept so loudly the Egyptians could hear him. And word of it quickly carried to Pharaoh's palace. "I am Joseph," he said to his brothers. "Is my father still alive?" But his brothers were speechless. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was standing there in front of them. "Please come closer," he said to them. So they came closer. And he said again, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery. But don't be upset. Don't be upset. And don't be angry with yourselves for selling me into this place." You ready? "It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. This famine was that has ravaged the land for 2 years and will last 5 more. And there will neither be plowing nor harvesting. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and to preserve many survivors. So it was God who sent me here, not you." Providence. You and I don't think of you being where you are right now as providence. But you need to think about it. If you had not gone through some of the things you went through, and the experiences you went through, and that you had not changed, and by the way, it was these difficult, tragic, hard times, these hard lessons that have brought you and I here today. We have learned by experiences, and now we are able to sit and be in the presence of God, knowing that the experiences that I had in my life were not meant to kill me, but God allowed those things, and He set me up for my future. Some of you have had major experiences in your background, but now God has brought you to a place of peace, that you can accept those things that were done to you then, and realize that God kept you through it all. And here you sit. Here you sit, ready to bless somebody else. You've gone through all your hard times. You've suffered. You've endured. And now you can grab somebody else by the hand and lead them through their difficult times. You didn't lose anything. You didn't miss anything. I didn't miss a thing. All the money I blew, I didn't miss it. I enjoyed it in that moment. People say, well, if I had all that money, now if I had the money I had then, now, I might still be a heathen. We ever think of that? If I had if I had now what I had then, you and I still might be heathens. We still might be out there. But God prepared not only a time now, don't you understand that God prepared a way to get you and I to the place that we are right now? He looked into our future. He knew what we needed to get us to this place of salvation, to get us to this place of peace, to get us to this place of understanding, and we will get upset with God because we don't understand what God is doing. It's nothing but provision. It's nothing but providence. It's only His way. And He took all of that pain to bless you. You can understand it a little better. And there are those of you in this room, and you're concerned, and you're going, well, I don't quite understand it. I'm struggling with why I have to go through what I went through, and it is difficult for me to face right now. Just remember, Joseph went from the pit, in the Potiphar's house, in the prison, then to the palace. There's a step-by-step by step process. And are you going to tell God your maker what you will not do? Are you going to tell God, I'm not going to go through that? Yes, you will. If you want to get to where God has for you, that best place for you, that place of healing and health and wholeness, you better be willing to go through the process. Come on. Because God is providing for you what you need.
That's right. Amen.
He's looking at your future and He knows it.
Yeah.
Bow your heads with me. Every person in here, I want you to think a minute on how God, in His providence, has taken care of you. Saved you from your pit. Delivered you from Miss Potiphar. Protected you in your prison. And promoted you to your palace. Well, somebody just said, well, I didn't get to my palace yet. Not the palace of our human thinking. Some of us aren't able to handle the palace. We'll be destroyed if God placed us in the palace right now. Please understand. If you're in this room and you're questioning what God is doing, if you're not sure what you need to do tomorrow, if you still got your skates on, take them off and sit down. Why? Because God's providence, even in your painful experiences, is at work.